What is going on, everybody? Welcome into Fantasy Alarm Sports Talk. I'm Howard Bender. With me here on a beautiful Friday, heading into week 3 of the NFL season, is Adam Ronis. Uh, First game in the books already. Miami wins outright, Adam, beating Jacksonville. Minshew Mania, absolute trash, and living proof that the beard is better than the mustache.
I don't know about that, but I did think Miami was going to win this game straight up. We talked about it on the Any Up podcast the other night, and I brought it up on the live stream, and Jen was shocked. I'm like, "What is Jacksonville, Baltimore now? Like they can't lose? Like it was for real. Like it just felt like Miami to me was going to win that game." But I was surprised at how poorly Minshew played. I did use him in a couple leagues, and I know some people feel burned today, but you got to look at what he did the first 2 weeks. He had 3 passing touchdowns in each of the first 2 games in against defenses that are better than Miami. Miami was getting trounced defensively the first couple of weeks. So it didn't work out. I think the DJ Chark absence obviously played a bigger role than we thought because he has the ability to go deep and stretch the defense. And look, he just played poorly. It was one of those games. And fortunately, Laviska Shenault, and I have in a lot of leagues, and I didn't play him. I just didn't see and I think this is a lesson learned because people do this. Oh, well, Chark is out. Now he's automatically going to go off. Did I like him better? Yes. Moved him up the rankings. But when I looked across my lineups, I'm not taking him out for Josh Kelly, Antonio Gibson. Those were a couple decisions. I said, no, I'm not going to do it. No, I think in a PPR at 8, which is okay, not terrible, but it wasn't what you wanted. I mean, his prop, as soon as I saw Chark was out, I was like, all right, let me go to the sports book, see what the prop is. Oh, 33 and a half. I'm taking the over. It actually went up to like 42 and a half, and he finished at 33. So I lost by half a yard. But I did get Preston Williams to score a touchdown at plus 300. So
I did
uh,
see that. His one catch, or did he have two
two,
catches?
two for 7.
2 for 7 with a touchdown.
I'll
Very,
take
very
it.
Jordan Howard-esque line right
Oh,
there.
geez. That's it. Look, but that's the problem, though, with Miami last night is Fitzpatrick only attempted 20 passes and completed
Right.
18. So they got the big lead and they didn't need to throw. So you have to take that into account with a guy like Gesicki, who I thought was a good start. We saw what he did in week 2. He had the touchdown catch, drew a pass interference, and that's the volatility of tight end. And Miami got a big. They're not going to be in this position many weeks. I looked ahead to the schedule. We're just not going to see Miami play winning 21-7 most weeks. So just take that into account when you look at the numbers from last night.
No doubt about it. Are we ready to just buy into Myles Gaskin right now? He led the team in carries. He has led the team in carries, but through the first 2 weeks, let's be realistic. He had 16 carries in total, and then last night you saw a season high in carries for that. However, does not get the red zone. At the goal line, they're still giving it to Jordan Howard. Jordan Howard was apparently signed to rush for 1 yard and a touchdown as many possible times as he can. Are you into Myles Gaskin now, given the state of the running back position?
I added him last week in one league, but he's not going to come close to my starting lineup unless injuries strike, which is certainly possible with the way this season has gone. So yeah, he should be rostered. But do you feel comfortable starting him? No. But it's clear. It seems like they feel he's their top back. We're not seeing much Breida, and as you alluded to, we're only seeing Howard near the goal line. I tweeted out last night he's going to get 16 rushing yards and 16 touchdowns this season.
That is your 7th round pick in fantasy, baby, and I've got him everywhere. um, how much can we blame on Gardner Minshew last night? And how much of the blame can we shift to the fact that his receivers absolutely sucked and continuously dropped passes? Chris Conley, more importantly, I mean, you want to talk about the loss of DJ Chark. I mean, the passes that Conley dropped last night, it was ridiculous how many easy catches that just kind of, bounced in. I mean, it wasn't catching with his hands. They couldn't bring it into his body. I mean, it was just an outright mess. So while, yeah, Minshew, who, his previous interceptions in weeks 1 and 2 were coming off, or in week 2, he threw 2, were coming off of tip passes. How much do we blame on the receiving core just being really subpar?
Yeah, they definitely played a factor. I mean, he didn't play that well either, but I don't think his guys were getting open because there were times I'm like, why is he not getting rid of the ball? Like you could kind of see the pass rush caving in. and he was holding on to the ball, but I don't think his receivers were getting open. So I think that was a big factor. And look, that's the NFL, right? Like you say, oh, wow, Minshew's played great the first 2 weeks, and now he's got a great matchup at home and doesn't get it done. We've kind of been through this situation before. I mean, you do the best you can to predict this, but there's some weeks you just go, hey, I had the right analysis. It looked good, and it didn't happen. And that's going to happen throughout the season, unfortunately. And we should have known because, I could not believe all the Jacksonville love this week. I mean, I was just like, oh yeah, they're gonna cover, they're gonna win this game, and like Miami's not good, but Jacksonville's not a 2-1 team. That's the way I kind of looked at it. And Miami played better against Buffalo the previous week. I mean, they gave them a fight. They came back, and we know how Fitzpatrick is. I started Fitzpatrick in a Superflex league. I only had 2 quarterbacks, Wentz and Bridgewater, and Fitzpatrick was available. I picked him up, played him over Bridgewater. It worked out. He obviously had the 2 passing touchdowns and a rushing touchdown. And we saw last year, there were times he played well, and it looks like he'll hold off Tua for a little bit.
Mistakes can be made. I started Minshew. I benched Baker Mayfield in favor of Minshew.
I would have told you the same thing if you asked.
Right. But see, here's the funny thing is I did it in the Fish League. It's called the Steal Your Face League. I did it, and a friend of mine who's in that league as well, she came at me, and she was like, you told me Gardner, it was last year. She was like, you told me Gardner Minshew sucks, and now you're going to start him in this one here, and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, hey, things change, this and that. And you know what? I had that thought in my head of, well, Chark's out. And you and I were talking about Miami. Craig Mish and I talked about Miami on the Fantasy Alarm Show on Thursday. I said Miami plus the 3 can win it outright and take the under. So from a betting standpoint, we were all over the right side of the fence in this game. From a fantasy standpoint, still kind of screwed it up there as far as using Minshew, especially just going against what we knew was going on there. So live and learn. That's the way it goes.
He had 42 pass attempts. They were losing. The game script was set up perfectly, right? And if he gets one of those touchdowns late, we feel a little bit better. He ran, but look, it didn't work out. But I'm glad that I didn't fall into the Laviska Shenault trap because I think people had the urge, oh, Chark is out, and now we got to push him up. And we were getting questions on the live stream, and I discussed it. I'm like, look, I'm not forcing him in. If you don't have good options, fine. And again, I have him in at least 3-4 leagues. I didn't start him in any of them.
James Robinson, real deal or sell high?
I think he's the real deal, man. He looks really good. Now, you should always look to sell high on anyone because people are watching that game. It's an island game. They see it. They're talking about him. You never know what you can get. But he looked real good, involved more in the passing game than I thought. But we know he's probably going to get most of the goal line carries. When the game is close, he's going to get it. We did see more Chris Thompson last night, trailing late. But Robinson still had the 6 receptions. So I have him on a team where I lost Saquon Barkley. So that's huge. But, yeah, I mean, I had him like 17th, 18th at running back this week. And I think he's going to be, RB2 most weeks. But, yeah, you should always look to see what you can get, especially for that Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey owner right now. They might say, oh, wow, that guy looked good. Maybe I should trade for him. And you might be able to capitalize and get something more than you originally anticipated.
I started him in the GST League.
Nice.
Feeling really groovy about that. No doubt about it.
Did you draft him or pick him up off waivers?
I think I picked him up on the first waiver period. You know what it was?
You spent?
What's that?
Do you remember how much you spent?
Not a lot because it was the very first waiver period that we did. And what happened was this is where, utilizing your sources kind of helps and having friends that, working with teams and stuff like that. I'm in the Football Diehards Dynasty League, which is like this. It was crazy 36 team 4 conference. It's insane. In the very first waiver period before the season started, Mike Dempsey, who does work for the Jacksonville Jaguars, put a $400+ bid on James Robinson before we even saw a game. And everybody was all in on Divino Zigbo and Rykel Armstead. And he went and did that. And immediately I was like, oh, there you go. And that's what kind of turned me on to James Robinson. Have him in a couple of places now because of that. So always pay attention to what your buddies say.
Yeah, I was able to get him in my home league for cheap because I think we saw Armstead had the COVID again, Ozigbo had the hammy, so then it was narrowed down. When it was all four, it's like, oh, this is a mess. But I mean, the indication was Jacksonville was high on him. I know in my GST league he went for like 600.
Yeah, much cheaper. Yeah. All right, let's look ahead here to the weekend. Real interesting slate because from a DFS standpoint, two of the premium games aren't even on the main slate. So you would have to either play the Monday, the Thursday or the Sunday to Monday, or you would have to play the primetime slate for just two games there. Green Bay, New Orleans, that over under is at 52.5 right now. Chiefs, Ravens, that's at 54. So taking those two out, which, listen, I get it. Well, first of all, let's ask this. The games that have those crazy over-unders, and Dallas, Seattle has already gone up to 57 right now. That started off at 55.5, and now at 55.5, going up a point, has Detroit, Arizona. If you've got guys on your fantasy roster who are involved there, now I'm not talking about, your DeAndre Hopkins, or Kenny Galladay if he starts. Oh, maybe Kenny Galladay if he starts. But are you making sure that you've got those guys in your fantasy lineups because of this high scoring stuff?
It depends on the player, but no, I mean, I'm not going to jam someone in there just because the total is high. I mean, it might not get to that total. It could be wrong. It could go under by 10 points. So, no, I don't think you have to. I mean, Dallas, Seattle, I think anyway, you're starting most of those players. I think it would be shocking if it's not a high scoring game. Seattle has come out and been more aggressive and passed a lot. Dallas, coming into the year, the weakness was the secondary, and they got a lot of injuries there now. And we've seen how the defense was, how bad it was last week. So I expect Seattle to take advantage. And with Seattle, it's pretty much Metcalf and Lockett in the passing game. So I expect both those guys to go off. Wilson, Carson, and Dallas, same thing on the other side. I mean, we saw last week. The only guy who really didn't come through was Gallup. So maybe he's a little sneaky that could go lower owned because people think like, oh yeah, he's not going to do anything now. And maybe we look at him differently if that offensive pass interference wasn't called against him in week one. So
let me stop you there. Let me ask you about that Dallas receiving core because let's face it, Dallas is going to, their defense is shaky. It's all banged up and injured, so they're going to be in a lot of shootouts because they're going to give up points. And we saw it, last week, which was insane against Atlanta. But granted, that's Atlanta. When you look at it, it's still there are a lot of mouths to feed. You've got CeeDee Lamb, you've got Cooper, you've got Gallup, you've got Dalton Schultz, who's a strong pass catcher. You've got Zeke, who everybody keeps saying is going to keep getting more and more involved in the passing game. Like at some point, you kind of have to look at this receiving core and say, two out of the three are probably going to hit. It's determining which of the one isn't, and how do you avoid that? Now, for the first 2 weeks, it has been Michael Gallup. CeeDee Lamb had a great game for himself last week. Do you look at this situation here with Seattle and, maybe check out the wide receiver cornerback matchup article we have at Fantasy Alarm, see what those matchups are? Really, how are you going to sit there and look at this Dallas, trio? Because I'm sure that you, a Dallas Cowboys fan, have your fair shares of a number of these guys.
Actually, no, I don't. I don't think I have any Cooper redraft league. I know I have CeeDee Lamb and Gallup. Gallup's the issue with Gallup is he doesn't really play the slot much. He's the outside guy, and with their offensive line having some issues, the plays take longer to develop for Gallup because he's kind of become more of the deep threat. And Lamb's playing the slot a lot, Cooper sometimes as well. So that's kind of been the issue. Schultz, I mean, we can't count on that every week. I mean, he just happened to be open last week, and Dak was finding him continuously, but that probably is the best game he's going to have all year. So everyone's
really? 908 fab dollars later, that's the best game Dalton Schultz is going to have?
I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Dallas puts up 40 every week. So, but yeah, everyone's going to gravitate to Cooper and Lamb this week. So maybe in a GPP, would it be crazy to throw Gallup in there if you want exposure to that game?
A little contrarian play. He's definitely priced down for sure. All right. Let's see. One of the things that, love to mine for value. making whether it's a start-sit decision or not in seasonal, but also playing for DFS. We're obviously in the midst of numerous injuries, looking all over the place. You could talk about let's start at the running back position because that seems to be the big one. You've got Davis replacing McCaffrey. You've got Mostert out, so everybody's pivoting to Jerick McKinnon. You've also got Jeff Wilson there. Zach Moss is out for Buffalo. He's already been declared out. So all of a sudden now, Devin Singletary, does he become a little bit more of an attractive option?
Yeah, a little bit more. I mean, the Rams defense has been good, but Singletary, the problem with him is he has been splitting with Moss. We haven't seen him. He's got 9 and 10 carries the first 2 weeks. This will open up more targets for him too, you would think. I mean, yeah, they might use TJ Yeldon a little bit more, but I gotta think Singletary plays most of the snaps, so he does become more appealing this week.
He does. What about Jeff Wilson versus Jerick McKinnon?
I mean, Wilson, I think, is cheaper, right?
Much.
Yeah.
$4,000 on DraftKings.
Yeah, I think he's a solid play because they're going to use him. I think, look, McKinnon's look good, but I also think they don't want to overwork him, especially going back to MetLife Stadium on their turf where they consistently complained about it and they had a lot of guys get hurt. So I think McKinnon will be involved, but Wilson could wind up with more touches and also the goal line carries. You saw it last year. I mean, there's the potential he scores 2 touchdowns. So for DFS purposes, if you want exposure to this running game, I think Wilson at a cheaper price certainly becomes appealing. Although, I haven't really dove too deep into the slate as much as you, but I'm guessing this is a week where you could kind of do anything. Like, do you really need to save a lot? How many high-end guys do we have to pay up for? I mean, there's the highest priced guy on DraftKings is Elliott at 8.3. I mean, yeah. I mean, so Zeke's going to be appealing at 8.3, Henry at 7.8. So some of these top running backs, but we don't have an elite tight end on this slate, right? No Kelsey, no Andrews, Kittle ruled out. So the highest priced guy is Higbee at 5.9, and receivers, Hopkins will be popular at 7.9. No one's going to play Julio even if he's active at 7.4 because he's dealing with a hammy. Ridley, you'll be popular. I mean, this seems like a slate where you can kind of do what you want. Am I correct?
For the most part, it's one of the things that John and Pemba and I were talking on the DFS podcast over at Fantasy Alarm, where we were spending up and possibly spending up at quarterback, grabbing Russell Wilson, Dak Prescott, and being able to do that. The problem is that as you dive further into the positions more and more, surprisingly, there's not as much value as you would actually think that you would see on a slate like this, where all of these guys, like Lamar Jackson's gone and Patrick Mahomes is off, and no Aaron Rodgers and any of the Saints.
Kamara, yeah.
Oh, Kamara, yeah. I mean, that's just so you're looking at a lot of those guys, but when you sit there and you have all of these, the mid-tier guys who kind of get bumped a little bit more. Then all of a sudden, when you start mining for value, it's like I'm all in on the cheap ass tight ends. Like, give me Drew Sample at 3,500 on DraftKings. I'll take that all day long. I would have said the same thing about Mo Alley Cox, but Jack Doyle returned to practice today, and that kind of screws that up. I think there are some QBs that you can pay down for. But yeah, when you're looking at like the running back position and the wide receiver position, it's that, Ridley, Godwin area and wide receiver where I think a lot of people are going to hang out. Even Lockett and Metcalf are still kind of in that spot as well. Surprisingly, not a lot of like huge value guys to play. I don't know how I'm going to fill out the dartboard this week.
For overall or receiver specifically?
Just overall, I would say. I mean, I always like to grab, like Jeff Wilson. I'd rather put him in the playbook at $4,000 than in the dartboard because I think that that's something that more people should utilize because you need those, those salary saving guys who are expected to get the goal line carries. It's just going to help you in your cash game play as well. But, when I'm like really mining for value through it, I mean, it gets a lot tougher to pull it out.
So you're not on Braxton Berrios?
I am not. Do you believe that? I can't. I was all set to do a jet stack. All right, dude, let me ask you this one here, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Colts 11.5 point favorites. Survivor League, no brainer, right? I mean, I can't possibly think that Braxton Berrios as the top wide receiving option, along with Frank Gore as the number one running back, is really going to help carry the Jets into this one. But do you like giving 11 and a half points on the betting front there in the NFL? Double-digit point spreads?
No, I don't, because they could easily lose, 30-20, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I
20.
don't.
That's adorable that you think the Jets can score 20 points.
Let's
Thank you.
let's remember this Colts team lost to Jacksonville in week 1,
Yes, they
right?
did.
It wasn't that game, and that game was in Indy, wasn't it? Yeah. So don't rule it out. When it seems like it's too easy, it's not. I love when people sit there like, oh yeah, I love this team this week. They're going to cover. I'm like, okay. Why? Because, the Jets have looked horrible. They've been atrocious, but they could lose by 10. Fine. I'll 20-10. You feel better? Is that more realistic? 20-10?
Yeah. Oh, that's 10. That seems a little bullish too.
24-14. Well, no, that means the Jets scored 2 touchdowns. So
yeah. Why don't you give it like 3 field goals?
23-13. 24-13. They still don't cover. 11 and a half.
Oh my God. Unbelievable. So what are the games that you're watching this week? I mean, from a D, like, you haven't dove in headfirst into this DFS slate yet. You'll obviously probably be doing that today. The Playbook Fantasy Alarm, that comes out tomorrow. So where are you kind of looking at right now that maybe not a lot of people are looking at? Like, perhaps, can we see the Bears wide receivers actually produce? Allen Robinson, Anthony Miller, smash spot against the Atlanta Falcons. Can we please talk about that?
Yeah, I think Robinson's a good play this week. People are scared because of what they see in the first couple weeks. He's affordable. Look, this is a spot he's got to eat. The targets have been there. 9 targets in each of the last 2 games. And the last year I went back and looked, and he had a terrible week 2 also, just like last week. And he still finished. He's on pace to finish the year close to the targets he had last year. We know Mitch Trubisky was a problem, but he went through most of the season last year and still put up productive numbers. So, Atlanta is just so bad in the secondary. They have injuries. So this should be a week that Allen Robinson goes off. And I don't know if he's going to be popular because, look, like DraftKings, you can go up 300 more for Metcalf, 200 more for Lockett, 300 more for Cooper. Even Cooper Kupp's got a pretty good matchup this week around him. Everyone's going to go in that direction. So he might not be that popular because they're going to be like, well, why am I going to pay for him with Trubisky when I can just go up to those Seattle receivers? And in GPPs, that's what you're looking for, is you're looking to go against the grain and find someone in a similar price range that can go off. So I do like Robinson this week. Miller, I don't feel as good about because he's not playing enough snaps. They're not using him in a lot of 2 wide receiver sets. So, but if you're going to stack the Bears, if you want to go that way, remember, Trubisky won a millionaire maker for a couple people last year. There were a couple weeks that he went off. So if there's any week he can do it, it should be here against Atlanta. And we know Miller's got the talent. It's just 3 targets last week, no catches. He dropped a touchdown. So he's a little bit more risky. But again, if you're going to play multiple lineups and GPPs, that's the risk you have to take. If you're going to sit there and go with what everyone else does, it's going to be hard to be different. So, yeah, I do think I definitely like Robinson this week for sure. And I don't think he's going to have that high ownership because I think a lot of people were looking at the last week. Oh, he's complaining about the contract. They're going to feed him. His teammates are talking about him, and he didn't get it done. But part of that was also they were playing from ahead, and they didn't have to pass as much.
Can Atlanta jump out to enough of a lead based on their offense against Chicago to end up putting that in there? And wouldn't if you were to stack Bears, let's say you were to stack Bears this week, and however you want to do it, whether it's with receivers, with running back, is it Trubisky, Montgomery, Robinson, and you play it safe, or do you go like dirty and go Trubisky, Tariq Cohen, and Robinson, or Tariq Cohen and Anthony Miller to get even filthier?
Yeah, it's either Trubisky and the 2 receivers or Trubisky, Montgomery, and Robinson. I think Robinson you got to lock in. He would be the guy that definitely. I mean, he's getting the targets. Now it's a question of, all right, he's had 9 each of the first 2 weeks, and this should be a game I think that's back and forth. I think Atlanta wins this. The reason why I'm not completely confident, number one, they're favored. Number two, how do they respond off that just absolutely pathetic loss last week? Like, where's their mental state? I just don't think the Bears are that good. They're 2-0, but they are not good. And this is a spot where Atlanta's going to put up points. That's the one thing we know about them, their offense, and especially there's a good chance Julio Jones doesn't play. That's going to make Calvin Ridley so popular. I mean, Ridley's going to be really highly owned, but you really can't argue with it. Double-digit targets both weeks. This will probably be the week, though, he doesn't score after scoring 2 touchdowns in each of the first 2 games, right?
Well, it's so funny because Mpemba and I were talking about that also because he made a Russell Gage call. And I think Russell Gage out of the slot is fantastic. If Julio plays, Gage stays in the slot, and I think that's a smash spot for him to do. And while everybody is on Calvin Ridley, you can definitely get away with Russell Gage. The question is, if Julio's out, let's say they hold him out, do they move Gage to the outside and then throw in a guy like Christian Blake to all of a sudden pop in at the slot? And is Blake all of a sudden that low-owned contrarian play that nobody has, and all of a sudden, he comes up with like 6 targets and 4 catches with a touchdown?
Yeah, I mean, that's the key also. And, do they throw Julio out as a decoy? We've seen Julio play in these situations before. But this is also, I don't think the Bears defense is like dominant, but this is the best defense they have faced. Seattle is not a good defense anymore. Like, I mean, we've seen it through the first 2 weeks. So don't go on reputation. And we know Dallas is not a good defense. So they've had 2 great matchups. It's a little bit tougher this week. I'm not saying they won't put up points. I think they will, but this is the toughest matchup they've had defensively so far.
All right, let's look at another game here that I'm kind of eyeballing for this weekend. That's Tennessee at Minnesota. Minnesota's defense is just trash. I mean, let's just face it, it's trash. But, Derrick Henry, it took him 31 carries to break the century mark in week 1. Had 20-plus carries in week 2, only came up with 84 yards. That was supposed to be a smash spot for Tennessee, obviously against Jacksonville, who played it a lot tougher than we expect. Now, we look at Minnesota, their run defense is atrocious. I mean, they got Ngakoue in a trade, but, I mean, he's a pass rusher. He's not a run stuffer. They don't have Linval Joseph in the middle of that line. You also talk about the secondary, which has gotten a complete makeover. And all of a sudden now Cameron Dantzler and Mike Hughes both ruled out for this one here. So Tannehill, Derrick Henry, and with A.J. Brown out, do we dare go for COVID's year #1 wide receiver, Corey Davis?
Look, they're in a good spot. You hit it on Minnesota. I knew going into the year they'd be bad. I didn't think they would be this bad. I do expect them to play better this week at home. The one concern is, what if this is a very slow-paced game? The Vikings have ran 96 plays in the first 2 games. 96. That is nothing. And we know what Tennessee wants to do too. Even though Tannehill threw a lot week 1, they want to grind it out and play slow. So that would be my one concern about this game. But the thing is, pretty much who's getting the ball on both sides, right? I mean, they're going to keep feeding Henry. He hasn't had the lanes the first couple weeks. They just haven't been there, but they're going to keep feeding him. Look, Tannehill again. He did it last year. He's so efficient. He can get it done on 25, 30 passes. You don't want to rely on that, but it is a good matchup. And Jonnu Smith, Corey Davis are the guys there. So I don't know if I'd stack it. I do think that's not going to be very popular. So if you want to go in that direction, you can. But yeah, those guys have been getting it done. And I think people will go back to Henry again because the volume's there. And one of these weeks, he's going to score 2 touchdowns. It's going to happen.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that happened to me at the King of the Beach last year, where I ended up at the live final down in Miami. And I was like wavering, trying to figure it out. And I was like, I know I want some late game hammer there, but everybody's going to be on Derrick Henry. Do I differentiate myself from the pack? And I actually, the guy I can't even remember who I pivoted to because he didn't even come close to Derrick Henry, but he still ended up in the end zone and he had a good time there. Ended up finishing like 12th or 13th in that one, which was nice. But yeah, Derrick Henry just had that game and it just poured out. And listen, I think that Minnesota, they want to run Dalvin Cook over and over and over again. That's what Gary Kubiak does. But if Tennessee can be efficient and they can creep down there, they can do it. So would you say that, not enough upside on the Tennessee side to stack that one for a GPP? Would that be more of like, I'll use Tannehill in cash, I'll use Henry in cash. Well, Henry you could probably throw into GPP as well. But so for that stack, would you say that maybe if you're building 10 lineups and throwing it, then that's one of the 10, but not one of your primaries?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you seem to like it, so don't listen to me. If you like it, go with it. My only concern is, again, what if they both play at a slow pace? But Minnesota's terrible defensively, and Tennessee's look good, man. I mean, I'm using Tannehill in a season-long league.
Mm-hmm.
It's just no one wants to believe in him, and I understand because we looked, all right, well, he can't do that again. He was so efficient last year, but so far, I mean, well, week one, 43 pass attempts. Last week, only 24. And that was in a 33-30 game, man. You know what I'm saying? So, and he had 4 passing touchdowns. So, yeah, one of these weeks he can't come through, and Henry's going to get his 2 touchdowns. But the thing that you like about Tennessee is we know where the ball's going for the most part, Corey Davis is cheap. I know you talked about him. I will say Pittsburgh, Deontay Johnson, how's he only 5,400 on DK? Okay. And I like I also like James Conner in tournaments. No one's talking about him at all. I mean,
Big Ben, James Conner, Deontay Johnson, Pittsburgh at home stack.
I think that's kind of sneaky, right? I mean, I know Seattle, Cowboys, Chicago, Atlanta, Tennessee, Minnesota, Tennessee, the player but no one's saying anything about Pittsburgh. Arizona, obviously. Christian Kirk was ruled out. Not that matters, but just throwing it out there.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the things, and it's really kind of funny when you look at it. One of the things that we love our late game hammer, and there are 4 4 o'clock games for this one, and 2 of those 4 o'clock games are like smash games with Dallas, Seattle, and Arizona, Detroit. So it's definitely an interesting situation of where you want to go.
You have to have some Dallas, Seattle, though, right? There's no way this game is 2017, right? I mean, I know we've done this before and it happens, but in this situation, I don't see how this is a low-scoring game.
No, I don't see how it's a low-scoring game either. I won't bet the over/under because 57 is a high number.
It's crazy,
right?
It keeps going up all week.
It's crazy. It's nuts. But for me, I look at that and say everybody's going to try and stack that game. You're going to see so many game stacks. And you know what? Listen, if you're a max entry guy and you're throwing in 150 lineups, you bet your ass you better have a Dallas stack and a Seattle stack, more than one. But for the same token, if you're just playing, a couple of lineups, my recommendation is just you sprinkle in some of the late game stuff. Like, for example, in a lineup that I built, it's a lot of early game stuff, but I got Tyler Lockett in there and I've got Keenan Allen in there, who we haven't talked about going up against Carolina, the Chargers. I think that's another one that's pretty, pretty quiet for everybody. But, having those 2 wide receivers there is a smart idea, because the last thing you want to do is just come out of the gate firing on the early slate. And then all of a sudden you just watch yourself just go out of the green as, these teams are putting up a total of 50 to 60 points.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And we expect points in those games. Another tournament play I like is Deshaun Jackson this week.
Oh, yeah. Alshon Jeffrey already ruled out.
Yeah, no rate.
Greg Ward is a little sneaky guy there, huh? Jalen Reagor's out. Ooh.
People are down on Philly with the way they played, but this should be a bounce back spot against the Bengals, who are just not good defensively, missing a couple of defensive linemen. I mean, they made the Browns look like a Super Bowl contender.
Or does Cleveland just cough it up this week? Do they just?
Well, so on the Alarm After Hours show, we have to bet an underdog every week, and we do like a draft order. So last week I had the Giants. Fenstein cheated and took the Rams +1. So we had to change that's not an underdog, right?
No.
Thank you. So I said, look, we can do whatever you want, but we amended the rules. So now it's got to be at least +3. I took Washington +7.5. I think they cover.
It went up. You know what? When it was 6.5, I was leaning Cleveland, but it's gone up now to 7.5, and that kind of turns me off a little bit. I mean, I love the Cleveland run defense, but with Greedy Williams out and Denzel Ward actually now questionable for the game with a hamstring issue, that really kind of turns off a lot of things there for Cleveland. So, all right. You know what? We're running over. You and I, we could sit here and talk for hours. You know, I mean, maybe we will. Should we just sit here and just kind of talk straight through from now until the game starts?
Just let it film. Just let it roll.
Just let it roll, man. John and Pemba's producing for us, and he's probably like, John, just go make a sandwich. Adam and I are good here for a little while. No, that's going to do it for us here. Obviously, guys, check out everything that you listen. Adam and I do Annie Up. John and Pemba and I have done Annie Up together. Those podcasts. Last night, John and I did. We picked all of Sunday and Monday's games in under 12 minutes. You know, we had the read for Monkey Knife Fight. We had a minute of intro, so we really kind of did it all in under 10 minutes. So that's like a nice, super easy, easy one for you. Adam is all over the place with Alarm After Hours and the Annie Up podcast. You guys are missing out if you aren't diving into everything that we're offering at Fantasy Alarm. So do yourselves a favor. Get in on it. Also, wageralarm.com. Craig Mish and I doing all our picks for the Westgate Super Contest. Adam's doing best bets. We're doing showdown slates. Everything you could possibly want. So do yourselves a favor. Join the family. FantasyAlarm.com/packages. Use that promo code DOMINATE. Take 20% off. That's going to do it for us here on Fantasy Alarm Sports Talk. For Adam Ronis, I'm Howard Bender. We'll catch you next time.